More than 47,000 homes are sitting unsold across Arizona right now. That number jumped 12.2% in a single year. And behind every one of those listings is a seller who believed the desert still owed them a profit. Arizona was supposed to be the escape hatch. Families fled expensive coastal cities, traded traffic for sunshine, and convinced themselves that a bigger house and a backyard pool in the desert meant they had finally beaten the system. For years the pitch worked. Out-of-state money poured in. Builders carved new neighborhoods into dry sand. Investors treated entire zip codes like slot machines. But here is what they are not telling you. The desert is sending the bill through dry wells, frozen building permits, water trucks replacing pipes and price cuts, spreading across zip codes that were untouchable just 2 years ago. Today we count down 10 Arizona cities where the housing dream is drying out and the values are sliding fast. And by the time we reach number 1, you may never look at a desert bargain the same way again. Subscribe now so you never miss the next housing warning. Drive west out of Phoenix on Interstate 10, and Buckeye greets you with everything the relocation forums promised. Wide roads, fresh stucco, brand new roofs glinting white under the desert sun. Neighborhood entrance signs, advertising parks trails, and the clean suburban future families we're told to chase. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Zillow's 2026 data, the typical home value in Buckeye has dropped 11.6% over the past year. The average home now sits on the market for 67 days. In the 85,326 zip code, median prices have fallen to $390,000 down from their pandemic-era peak. The reason is documented. In June 2023, Arizona's Department of Water Resources concluded that Phoenix's outer suburbs had reached the anticipated limits of growth on groundwater supplies. New housing certifications in Buckeye were effectively frozen. The city's own mayor acknowledged the community had lost 2 years' worth of home building, with growth in Tartesso, one of the hottest-selling communities, coming to a near-complete stop. Picture a family who bought into a new subdivision because they believed in the growth story. They watched the builders pack up. The neighboring lots went quiet. The curb cuts stayed empty. If you bought in Buckeye at the 2022 peak, when median prices were pushing $420,000, and the market today sits at $390,000 according to Zillow, that is a $30,000 paper loss before commission carrying costs, and the interest you kept paying while waiting for a buyer who never arrived at that price. Would you call it affordable if the growth story ran out of water before it ran out of land? Head southeast into Pinal County, and Florence carries itself with the quiet confidence of a town that has seen almost everything. Old storefronts, government buildings that go back a century, flat desert land that used to grow cotton and now grows questions. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Redfin's current data shows homes in Florence sitting on the market for 77 days on average. That is more than 2.5 months. Average offers received per listing 1. In a market where sellers once held all the leverage, buyers are now the ones who can afford to wait. The root of this goes deeper than affordability. Florence and Pinal County depend heavily on groundwater and shrinking Colorado River allocations. When federal water cuts took effect, farms in the region had their allotments slashed in some cases to as little as 5% of their original supply. Farmers who lost surface water did not stop farming. They drilled deeper into the same underground aquifers that Florence's neighborhoods and planned growth already depend on. Every family buying a home here is quietly competing with agricultural operations for the same invisible supply beneath their feet. Picture a retired couple who moved to Florence for peace citrus trees and a mortgage payment that finally made sense. Then the utility bills start climbing. The neighbor's well starts running slow. And suddenly, the quiet town they chose for its affordability is being pulled into a resource competition they never signed up for. If you bought a median Florence home in 2022 at around $360,000, and the market today reflects $378,000 according to Redfin, that sounds like a gain until you subtract 2 years of high-rate mortgage payments, rising insurance, and utilities that only move in one direction. Would you retire in a town where your neighborhood's groundwater is also somebody else's irrigation budget? Take State Route 347 south from the Phoenix area, and the drive tells you everything before you arrive. The traffic thins. The desert stretches wide. The distance feels longer than the map suggested. By the time you reach Maricopa, you understand the bargain people made more square footage, but less of everything else. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin's March 2026 data, Maricopa home prices are down 4.3% year over year, with a median sale price of $340,000. The average home sits on the market for 103 days, more than 3 months. Zillow confirms the deeper damage Maricopa home values have dropped 8.4% over the past year alone. The structural problem was always embedded in the location. Maricopa is physically separated from core Phoenix by long stretches of highway with limited access routes. When mortgage rates were low and prices were climbing, the commute felt manageable. Now, with rates, elevated fuel costs rising, and Pinal County groundwater outlooks drawing warnings from state water officials, the same home that looked like a deal now looks like an island with a monthly payment attached. A working family who moved here for the larger lot and the lower price is now absorbing the full cost of that isolation. The hours behind the wheel each week, the car where the mortgage, with 28 years still on it, and a resale market that has gone very quiet. If you bought at Maricopa's 2022 peak when prices were near $370,000, and today's median sits at $340,000, according to Redfin, that is $30,000 in equity gone before a single repair bill or negotiation. Would you sign a 30-year mortgage this far from everything knowing what the resale market looks like today? Keep driving south into the wide open stretch between Phoenix and Tucson, and Casa Grande announces itself with everything a boomtown is supposed to look like. Warehouses line the edges. Industrial parks sit half-developed. New subdivisions fan out across flat desert land where developers once told buyers get in now before everyone else figures it out. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Redfin's March 2026 data, 33.9% of all homes listed in Casa Grande have already taken a price cut. 1 in 3 sellers has already admitted the market is not what they hoped. The average home sits on the market for 86 days, 10 full days longer than this same time last year. Casa Grande sits at the crossroads of competing water demands. Agriculture needs it. Industry wants it. New neighborhoods are being built around it. When groundwater levels inside the Pinal Active Management Area, a zone the state itself monitors for stress, show pressure from all directions. The growth story hits a ceiling that no brochure mentions. A construction worker bought in Casa Grande because the location math made sense cheaper than Phoenix, closer than Tucson, and a community that kept selling the idea of momentum. Then, the industrial anchor that was supposed to bring jobs either delayed or downsized. Now, he is sitting on an 86-day listing a price cut and a commute that costs more every month in both directions. If you bought at Casa Grande's 2022 high, when prices were near $315,000, and comparable homes today reflect $295,000 to $330,000. Depending on the source, you are looking at a market that has returned most of its pandemic gains, while your mortgage balance has barely moved. Would you buy into the next growth corridor if the growth depended on water that 3 industries are already fighting over? Subscribe now. If you have watched this far, you already know something most buyers do not. Drop your city in the comments, we may have already covered it. A few miles east of Casa Grande Coolidge sits surrounded by flat fields and low buildings, the kind of town that looks like it was bypassed by time on purpose. This is not the flashy edge of the Phoenix metro. This is older Arizona agriculture, slow pace, and land that used to be productive before someone decided it would also be profitable. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to data tracked by HomeLight and Rate.com, the Coolidge market has shifted into clear buyer territory days on market climbing toward 100 rising inventory and price softening, pulling the median down from a brief spike above $300,000 to closer to $290,000. Sellers who expected a quick offer are now watching listings sit, then get discounted, then sit some more. The water problem here is structural and on record. As of March 3rd, 2026, Arizona Water Company only just received its designation of assured water supply for the Pinal Valley service area from the state. Before that date, no new subdivision in Coolidge could legally be approved without proving a 100-year water supply, a bar that stopped development cold. The roads arrived. The water plan came years later. Drive into one of Coolidge's newer planned communities, and you may see what that delay looks like on the ground, freshly paved streets that end abruptly, utility infrastructure installed, and waiting curbs with no houses behind them. Longtime residents are now paying for a reputation problem they did not create: softening property values, rising insurance, and buyers who ask the water question before they ask about the school district. If you bought during the 2021 or 2022 frenzy at near $300,000, and the market today reflects $290,000 or below, your equity has been erased while the interest payments kept running. Would you buy into a community where the roads were built before the water plan was approved? Swing back toward the western edge of the Phoenix metro, and Goodyear greets you with manicured desert landscaping, spring training baseball, and gated communities that still look like somebody's idea of having made it. Clean streets, mountain views, the kind of suburb that used to sell itself just by existing. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Zillow's 2026 data, Goodyear home values have fallen 6.4% over the past year. Redfin's February 2026 data shows an additional 3.1% year-over-year drop, with a median sale price of $475,000. And the share of listings taking price cuts has reached 51.79%. More than half of all sellers in Goodyear are now cutting their asking price to attract a buyer. The deeper problem is what is reshaping the cost structure of living here. Arizona water rates are rising across the board, as AZ Family reported in March 2026, driven by aging infrastructure drought and the cost of securing non-groundwater supplies. Meanwhile, the market activity numbers are alarming. Year-to-date closed sales fell 11.6% in the first 2 months of 2026. New listings dropped 16.6%. Pending sales fell 20.3%. Everything moving in the wrong direction at the same time. A couple who moved here for the lifestyle, the quiet street, the mountain view, the HOA-maintained common areas, is now watching their carrying costs climb while their equity erodes. The home needed a price cut to attract a single offer. HOA fees went up. The monthly statement no longer looks like an investment. If you bought a median Goodyear home at its 2022 peak near $510,000, and today's median sites at $475,000 according to Redfin, that is $35,000 in lost equity, 7% of your original purchase price, gone before a single renovation. Would you still call it luxury if more than half your neighbors already had to cut their price to find a single buyer? Drive to the far southeastern edge of the valley, and Queen Creek still looks the part. Bigger lots, custom homes, horse properties, backyard pools that cost more to fill every year. Wide streets that make the whole place feel expensive, confident, and quietly removed from the anxieties of everyone closer to the city. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. Over the 3 months ending May 2026, Queen Creek home prices were down 2.6% year over year. According to Zillow, with a typical home value of $623,649, down 7.4% over the past year. The average home now sits on the market for 71 days. The water infrastructure bill has arrived, and it is significant. Queen Creek's Town Council approved a $465 million long-term water project. Residents are on the hook for $12.1 million to $14.8 million annually to service that debt through a new water resource fee, as reported by the Queen Creek Tribune. The town then separately approved a 15% water rate increase on top of that. 2 new recurring costs landing on the same household balance sheet in the same budget cycle. Wealthy buyers are not immune to carrying cost math. Combine a $600,000 mortgage at current rates, rising property taxes, HOA fees, the new annual water infrastructure fee, and a 15% rate hike, and the monthly cost of owning that luxury desert home has climbed in ways the original listing price never signaled. If you bought a Queen Creek home at the 2022 peak, when prices were touching $700,000, and comparable homes today reflect $624,000 or below per Zillow, that is $76,000 in lost value on paper, on a property that was supposed to be insulated from the volatility hitting lower price ranges. Would you buy a luxury desert home if the luxury included a 9-figure infrastructure bill you never knew you were signing up for? Leave the polished suburbs behind, drive northwest into the high desert, and the landscape turns rougher, wider, and far less forgiving. Kingman does not sell the same fantasy as Queen Creek or Goodyear. The pitch here is simpler land privacy distance, and the kind of independence you cannot buy in a gated community. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. According to Zillow's 2026 data, Kingman home values have dropped 6.0% over the past year, with the typical home now valued at $267,709. But in a community where many residents rely on private wells rather than a municipal water system, the listing price is almost beside the point because the real risk is not in the asking price. It is in the water table beneath the property. And that water table is in documented crisis. According to the Arizona Center for Investigative Reporting in November 2025, the Hualapai Valley Basin surrounding the Kingman region is losing water faster than it is being replenished at a rate of 50,000 acre-feet every year. More than 99% of the cropland in the basin is now owned or controlled by out-of-state farming operations and investment funds that are drilling aggressively into the same aquifer that local residential wells depend on. Residential wells have been going dry for years, as ABC 15 reported costs to re-drill a failing well run nearly $20,000. Some people have simply moved away, unable to afford to go deeper. Picture a retiree who bought land in Kingman because it was affordable and quiet. He drilled a well, built a modest home, lived peacefully for years. Then one morning, the water pressure dropped. Then it stopped entirely. What he owns now is not an asset. It is a problem with a property tax bill attached. If you bought a Kingman property near the recent Zillow peak of around $285,000, and the typical value today has declined to $267,000, that is $18,000 in lost value. Before you factor in the $20,000 it would cost to re-drill a failing well or what water uncertainty does to your resale pool. Would you call it freedom if your property's most critical utility could disappear overnight and cost $20,000 to restore? Circle back toward the southeast edge of the Phoenix region, and suddenly the streets multiply in every direction. Subdivision after subdivision, stucco house after stucco house, block walls and garage doors lining roads that were built faster than anyone could properly plan for. Santan Valley grew so quickly that the map was chasing the construction crews, not the other way around. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. EPCOR, the private utility serving much of Santan Valley, has filed an application with the Arizona Corporation Commission for a 51.94% increase on monthly wastewater bills and a 13% increase on water rates, as covered by ABC 15. This is not a rumor, it is a filed rate case. In a community where working families are already stretched by high mortgage rates, car payments, groceries, and rising insurance, a rate increase of that scale is not an inconvenience. It is a budget shock with a utility company's name on it. Santan Valley carries a structural problem that no new construction can fix. It is not an incorporated city. Residents have no independent authority over their utility providers, their infrastructure development, or the pricing decisions that arrive in the mail each quarter. They are consumers of services they cannot negotiate, governed by a county structure they cannot fully control. The housing numbers are responding to that pressure. Redfin's current data shows Santan Valley homes sitting on the market for 70 days, 7 days longer than last year. Inventory has grown to approximately 675 active listings, with more expected as rate-locked sellers begin to feel the financial squeeze. A young family bought here because the math felt close enough, a newer home, a decent school district, and a neighborhood where the street was clean and the garage was big. Then the rate hike filing arrived. Then the commute math stopped working. Then they ran the full monthly costs on paper and realized the affordable suburb was absorbing more of their income than they had ever planned for. If you bought a Santan Valley home at the 2022 median, near $400,000, and today's market reflects $425,000 according to Redfin, that nominal gain disappears completely once you account for 2.5 years of elevated interest payments, and a market where finding a buyer now takes 70 days. Would you buy into a suburb where the company controlling your water and sewer just filed for a 52% rate increase? Finally, turn northeast of Scottsdale, away from the golf resorts and polished shopping centers, and drive into a community of large custom homes on generous desert lots where the views stretch for miles, and asking prices once climbed past $1 million without much resistance. Rio Verde Foothills looked for a while like the desert dream at full resolution. Large lots, expensive homes, privacy, space, distance from the noise and density of city life. For buyers who wanted luxury and solitude at the same address, this place felt close to perfect. But here is what the real estate agents are not showing you. In January 2023, Scottsdale cut off the hauled water supply to Rio Verde Foothills. Approximately 500 to 700 homes, roughly 1,000 people, lost access to the water source they had depended on for years. Not because of a drought emergency or a natural disaster. Because of a policy decision about who deserves access to a finite resource when the pressure starts to build. The financial damage was immediate and documented. According to ABC 15's reporting, in the 6 months following the water cutoff, approximately 75 homes canceled their listings or let them expire. Sellers reduced prices by tens of thousands of dollars after Rio Verde Foothills became a national news story. Some residents saw their monthly water costs climb to triple what they had previously paid. In documented cases, the monthly water bill exceeded the monthly mortgage payment. Homes in this community range from $400,000 to over $1 million. When your water arrives by truck, when your water bill is larger than your mortgage, and when your property just made national headlines for the wrong reason, the buyer pool does not shrink. It disappears. A $1 million home purchased at the 2021 or 2022 peak entered 2023 as a property with a national reputation problem. Sellers had to cut prices by tens of thousands just to get any offer at all. That is not a market correction. That is what happens when the most fundamental utility in a home is not connected to a pipe. The Arizona Corporation Commission approved EPCOR as a long-term water provider in late 2023, but the infrastructure build could take years and cost over $12 million, all of which flows back to residents as fees. The warning signs were always there, in the absence of a municipal water line, in the fine print of the hauling agreement, in the assumption that Scottsdale would always be willing to sell. Would you put your life savings into a desert home where the most important utility arrives on wheels and can stop arriving whenever someone else decides the supply runs short? 10 cities, 10 versions of the same bet being called in 10 different zip codes, from Buckeye's frozen building permits to Florence's competing aquifers, from Maricopa's isolated commute trap to Coolidge's roads without water, from Goodyear's price cut wave to Queen Creek's 9-figure infrastructure bill, from Kingman's failing wells to Santan Valley's utility rate shock, and finally to Rio Verde Foothills, where a $1 million home became a survival problem when the water truck stopped coming. This is not a random set of markets having a bad quarter. This is what happens when an entire region builds on the assumption that the water will always show up, the buyer will always be there, and the desert will always honor the brochure. It stopped honoring the brochure. The warning signs were always there. The question is, were you watching? Subscribe, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and drop your city in the comments below, because the next warning may already be in your zip code.